To you. Today is Wednesday, the 18th of March, 2026, literally 2 weeks away to quarter end, a month end, everything together this month. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. So, yesterday I talked about predictability. Today I want to talk about why predictable numbers still blow up. And this is because of control theater, as they call it. This is one of the most expensive problems in governance because it hides in plain sight. So, why? You may say, why? Well, the papers exist, the commitments exist, the policies exist, the assurance language exists. But when pressure arrives, the same few people still need to intervene, interpret, escalate, and stabilize everything. So that's why I call it the boomerang effect. So the board, the executive team, the management have, or the founder establish all the things, cascade or delegated the things to the team, and then when the problems arrive, everything comes back to them. So then you're pretty much tunneled in the vision of the business every single time. Like now I mentioned quarter end, month end, probably the biggest strategies that you develop last quarter, Q4 last year for this coming year, 2026, now it start to get into a big fog, if you may, or have been parked, because what happened in the past 3 weeks in Middle East is a biggest destabilizer on pretty much everything, if not everything, at least in the conversation, and we start to seed some doubt of what is Q2 is going to look like. But what happened with the strategy you already set, right? So this is not a control environment, really. That is a dependency models with a document around it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. In a model that is developed is the advisory board operation system, right? So when you have this vision that actually whatever happens, you're tunneled or funneled your vision into something that actually is happening right now, right here, you start to drive the business in a linear way rather than in ecosystem way, because there are many things here that actually are impacting or not your business and how you're going to handle all the situations that are going on. Not always is the right decision, not always is the perfect decision, but at least you can make a decision, right? So yesterday, on Monday, we spoke on the first section, which is scale. Yesterday, we talked about predictability. And today, we are going to talk about something which is the third leg of this system, which is the controls and resilience, how your systems in terms of performance, governance, risk, and compliance, and your assets can help the organization. So I leave the model here so you can have it in front of you while I go along the conversation. Now, and this is why the systems, and system when I'm not referring to software necessarily, I'm talking about workflows, operation procedures, etc., etc. The escalation path or the triage, let's call it. When you have a problem, who you are going to call, why, what is the order, what is the protocol, etc., etc. So all these kind of things are systems. And this is why the system section of this advisory board operating system matters so much. Myself as a board advisor, this is where I help boards build the layer beneath the confidence, right? So you have your confidence, but there's a layer beneath that actually make that confidence or build up that confidence or strengthen that confidence, not with more paperwork, but with better ownership, cleaner escalation, sharper audit challenges, and an international advisory board focus on control gaps, whatever the gap sits in audit, cyber, operations, reporting, fraud prevention, program deliveries, you name it. Now, to illustrate these problems, I'm going to bring the UK frameworks and the Corporate Governance Code, the Financial Reporting, and the National Security Service, the three problems identified these situations. But bear in mind that any country in any geography in the world have similar mechanisms in terms of governance, suggestions, audits, statistics, etc., etc. I use in the UK because I'm very familiar with UK, but this can be translated to anywhere and any country because you have all these mechanisms in place too. And if you don't have them, the UK ones are very, very good ones. So you can at least download them and say, okay, I have a template now where I can start. And then you match that with your own geography, localization, etc., etc. Now, three problems. Number one, the UK Governance Code 2024 has been applied since January 2025, which is last year, and the provision 29 becomes applicable from January 26 this year, like 2 months ago. So boards are now, and what is this provision? That boards are now expected to be much explicit about how they monitor and review the effectiveness of the risk management and internal controls. And here's a key word: effectiveness. Is not that, oh, we have the policies, oh, we have this documented. No, it's not that anymore. You have to show effectiveness. In other words, evidence. Problem number two is the Financial Reporting Council annual review found that 25 companies out of 130 failed to report or report clearly on the effectiveness, again, of their internal controls. That is a warning. Many boards still describe governance better than they operated, right? And here's the thing. So it's 25 out of 30 is around 20%. And you say, well, but you're talking about boards here. So this is a large public listed companies. Here's the problem that you're going to have if you are a founder with 20 employees and less than 50 million pounds or 5 million pound revenue, all the way up to large listed companies. This effectiveness that the Financial Reporting Council are looking for, and the companies are failing, and also the Corporate Governance Code is looking to apply, or actually is applying since January this year, is cascaded down to everybody now, because the effectiveness that is required to the large corporations, guess where it's sitting? It's not in their own internal mechanisms and systems and protocols. It's also in all the people that are related to them, right? So if you are a supplier, if you're providing services, if you are providing raw material, if you are a partner, if you are a delegated contractor, etc., that is part of their now requirements in terms of effectiveness. So they will come back to you. You may feel it or not, but they will start to request more information, more reports, more evidence, etc., because it's part of their responsibility now in terms of effectiveness. So you see, when you talk about these things, is the principles apply pretty much for everybody. First, if you already start to apply these principles in your organization, you pretty much are on the path to a larger and more solid organization, more attractive for investors, finance, stakeholders, acquisitions, mergers, joint ventures, you name it. But if you are pretty much trying to figure out what to do next, then these challenges start to create a ceiling glass in your development as an organization. There's another thing that I want to mention today, which is a third big problem, which is cybersecurity. And here's a report. Breaches were reported in a survey in 2025 says the board level responsibility for cybersecurity among businesses has fallen from 38% in 2021 to 27% in 2025. So, and only 23% of the businesses have a formal incident response plan. That is, in my word, is not resilience. That is exposure, literally. And I have a very interesting case here that represents this. A very large organization in Spain, electrical supplier, had a breach early this year. Pretty much the whole database, including bank details, users, passwords, credit cards, you name it, the whole database was compromised. And compromised, I say just to say it softly, but I wouldn't say that was stolen, but it's pretty much that kind of thing. One thing is certain, my phone started to ring with very suspicious number up to 20 times a day after that breach. You see, nobody told me this. I've been the receiving end of a supplier that actually the response plan in terms of a particular cyber attack probably was documented, but how effective it was, I really don't know, because actually who knows what really happened there. But actually when you start to see all these emails, all these phone calls that have very, very strange messages and scammers, in other words, you start to realize that probably you are very exposed with their own suppliers that are supposedly the custody of your data. They are custodians of your data. Anyway, in other words, imagine a control framework that only works in the board pack or in your policies or in your documentation or in your binders. Is like a fire alarm wired to nowhere. So it looks compliant because you see the fire alarm, but actually when the moment you need it, is going to work. It's going to really to work. It's going to call the fire department. It's going to call the police. It's going to call the ambulances. It's going to call the service center to bring somebody to help you, or it's just a nice things to have. And then the inspectors come and they say, "Yeah, fire alarm installed. Well done." Is that effective or not? So that exactly happened with the organizations. And here's a big mistake that leadership make. They're treating controls as a reporting topic that I mentioned, but I'm going to say very plainly now, a reporting topic. But controls are a delivery topic, right? So the controls document decisions, whether the business can make good decisions under pressure, detect failure earlier, respond cleanly, and keep operating without executive heroics. Because then you bring a CTO or somebody and say, we are going to fix this, we're going to over communicate our customers and the public and everybody that actually we are doing an amazing job, but the damage was already done. So it's what is called damage control, really. It's not really fixing the root cause of that, actually, that they are, as I mentioned, your controls and your deliveries are a mismatch. So you are operating in a fire alarm that is not wired anywhere. So that means systems is not about bureaucracy, by the way. It's about institutional memory, it's about discipline, it's about survivability, right? So as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. And here's three things. Start with the materiality, not with templates. And when I mean materiality, is the business significance of financial or non-financial information, that what really matters regarding company performance, risk, or sustainability. So identify the handful of risks that would truly damage the company. Then define the controls that prevent, detect, or contain them. So the board should be able, or the board, I mean also the executive team or the management or the founder. You should be able to name the owner. Who is responsible for that? Is yourself or somebody specifically, or is somebody you hire a third party? Which is the cadence, how they control the things are happening and working when you need them, and the assurance route for each one, right? Second suggestion, bring cyber inside the governance, not alongside it. What I mean is actually now the National Cybersecurity Center board toolkit is clear that boards have a critical role in embedding cyber resilience through people, systems, processes, and technologies. This is not longer a specialist side issue. That's the IT department. That's a CTO responsibility. That is our specialist team, the third-party supplier. No, that's part of your responsibility now. By the way, this is according to UK frameworks and compliance requirements. In other countries, I don't know specifically, but look into that kind of things, because you don't want that blindside. So when something happened and then the regulator come and say, oh, we are going to fine you, or we are going to investigate you, or we're going to serve you a notice because you are not compliant on this, or your effectiveness or your controls are not correct. And you say, where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from this kind of regulation that are updating constantly. And if you don't have that at the top of your agenda all the time to make sure that you are compliant, not only compliant, that applies to you, that you have the protocols in place, you have the evidence in place, then you might have a problem. And the third thing that I will suggest is to build an operating rhythm around expectation, right? So in the calendar, put what have to be happening in this month, this quarter, half year, and the year, and the following year, etc., etc. So good systems do not wait for the year-end narratives. They surface breaches, near misses, overrides, weak signals, and control drift quickly enough for the board or the executive team to act before damage it compounds, right? So perhaps you have a leak there that you don't know or you're not aware of until it's too late, meaning that it explodes in front of everybody's face. And this is where many companies stay weaker than they need to be. They have smart people, yes. They have a hard-working executive, absolutely, yes. They have decent intention, totally. But they still rely on tribal knowledge. So one person knows how the number is produced. One person knows where the control really sits. One person knows which expectation is normal and which is dangerous. And we talked about danger yesterday, which is fragility. It's more dangerous the fragility of your organization than actually the cyber attacks, because then you won't have any organization if it breaks. Now, what do you gain working with me? So it's three things: outcomes, differentiators, and risk reduction. In terms of outcomes, we use the system section of the advisory board operating system. This is a portion that is underneath there on your screen to reduce institutional fragility, sharpen accountability, and make the control environment something the business can run, not merely describe, right? In terms of differentiator, I help boards assemble an international advisory board around the live weakness, combining audit, risk, cyber reporting, delivery expertise, and to make it much faster than a traditional hire without the cost of weight a major or the cost of the weight of a major consulting, and without locking the organization into a wrong profile, because sometimes you have the right profile for 6 months, and then what you do with this team when the circumstances change. For example, in the past 3 weeks, if you hired a very good profile for something that was assumed in Q4, that was the landscape or the forecast for 2026, in the last 3 weeks completely changed, and then you have a stellar team member today that actually pretty much have no use. It doesn't mean that actually they don't have the capacity, the skills, and experience. It means that actually what you planned completely changed today. And in terms of risk reduction, this is a perfect example of how a success look like at any level of the organization. If you are a £5 million organization, or $5 million or euros, up to 50 or 100 millions. This example is United Utilities, and their 25-26 half-year statement shows what a more operational material controls approach looks like. And this looks like this. It links risk to named controls, including governance and assurance, like a segregation of duties, system access controls, monitoring, training, and fraud risk assessment. That is risk reduction at its prime, and that stands to the public eye. And this is a listed company, so they already explain how they do it. So you have there a model that you can imitate or copy. So, and that's the kind of things that bring to the company with the kind of things or solution that we bring to your organization with an international advisory board. And I say an international advisory board because more than ever, the geopolitical circumstances impact even the local businesses. Even if you don't have exposure to international markets, it still impacted your business. So some solutions that people are bringing, for example, in France, in Italy, in Hong Kong, or Mexico, can help an organization here today, because actually they have a complete different view how things impact business and how you can make your organization much stronger, much better, and more resilient in time. So boards do not need more comfort language. That's the final message today. They need fewer blind spots. And when you get systems, something important happens. And systems, I'm not always talking about software, it's the processes. The business becomes less dependent on memory, less dependent on rescue, and less dependent on people who are quietly carrying too much institutional risk. So if somebody that everybody have to ask this person about something, that is a big condensation of risk. And we mentioned this early this week. But one action you can take home today, and is doable in 30 minutes or less. Ask for the top 5 material risk and require a one-page note naming the control owner, the review cadence, and the assurance route for each one of them. So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will show you why well-controlled businesses still stall if they protect the past instead of funding the innovation, reinvention. And this is a big challenge. So it's true. You have to, as they say in American football, you have to defense. But at the same time, you have to have an innovation, and reinvention, a midfield, an attacker, right? Because you have to continue doing business. You have to keep increasing your revenue, grow, etc., etc. The big problem with that is that the defense is very, very easy. It's not easy, but I mean, it's much comfortable that going into the midfield and make incursions, if you may, into the marketplace. Is all very uncertain, is ambiguity everywhere. There's a lack of leadership fog, as a good friend of mine says. So actually, what are I going to do now here? Because we need to protect this what we have today. And this is all the conversation that we are going to have tomorrow. So if you are a founder, a leader, a team, or investor, or executive group, and you want to help applying an international advisory board operating systems to strengthen your control and resiliences, set up a 30-minute call so I can understand your position today and how this independent international advisory board, looking from the outside in your organization, can help you and your team without stepping on your toes, without the traditional consulting overhead, and without the public theater. Right. Have